Hey, two Nicks. There you are. Wow.
Wow, really? There we go. It's my twin. Okay, we are back, and we are... Yeah, we're not doing Buddhism. Steve Matthew did Buddhism, and I've uploaded my PowerPoint presentation on Buddhism, so you can look under...
I apologize because I gave him such a hard time on it.
You did? Why?
I don't know.
He did a good job.
He did a great job.
Not preparing?
He did a great job.
Well, Steve Matthews is really good on world religions and cults. That's sort of like his expertise in apologetics. Okay, so let's talk about Confucius. Confucianism. And if you get confused, well, there you go. Origins, China, 6th century BC. So, 600 years before Christ, very, very old. Founder, Confucius, or they call him Kong-zi. K-O-N-G-Z, 551-479 BC. That was his era. He is one of the most influential people in all of Chinese history. One of the most. Other historical figures would be Mengzi, or Mencius, 372-289 BC. He was a philosopher and author who emphasized striving for the common good. Remember, when we started Eastern religions, I said it's not so much a religion. It's more philosophical systems, and some of them playing around with spiritism and the occult. And you're going to notice in some of these, like, for example, Taoism or Shinto, when a philosophical system or religious system has too much respect for the dead, you end up with divination. You know, weird occultic ways of veneration, all right? I'm not talking about the Orthodox Church. I'm not talking about the Roman Catholic Church and venerating saints. No, you have too much respect for the dead, right? You end up praying and talking to the commies and everything else. So keep that in mind. So really, Mencius was very influential, but again, philosopher, sort of like an ethicist for the common good of the people of China and the world. Then you have Zhongzi, 300-30 BC, who was also a philosopher emphasizing the evil of human nature and the need for ritual, and authority, right? Again, nothing really profound so far, you know? The golden rule, you can find that in most philosophical systems and most of the philosophers and most religions. There's nothing really profound. I'm not impressed at all by Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Shinto, or Confucianism. I'm really not. It's just, this is just an ethicist could come up with the same thing. And you'll notice that from the original birth of a system, you know, it just grows and grows and grows. And by the time you have a Far Eastern religion hitting the West, like Europe or the Americas, well, now it's like Shinto New Age on steroids, you know? It just, we change it, and truth doesn't change. Remember that. Truth does not change. And you can't be polytheistic and pantheistic at the same time. And a lot of them mix these. Remember, pantheism is all is divine. Divine is all, right? The table, the air, the trees. And then poly is many gods, right? In any event, major sacred writings, the 4 books of the Confucian canon. Remember canonicity? The canon of the Bible? The Confucian canon, 4 main books there. You have the Analects of Confucius, compiled by his disciples shortly after his death. 2, you got the Great Learning, attributed to Confucius and Zhengzi, 505-436 BC. And then you have number 3, The Doctrine of the Mean by Zizi, 481-402 BC. You can go online, remember, sacred writings, and you can copy and paste this and read till you go dizzy. We don't have time to cover all this. The Book of Mencius, attributed again to the author of the same name, Mencius, remember, the ethicist philosopher for the common good. Other important writings, the Book of Filial Piety, roughly 400 BC. And then you have the 5 classics, a collection which includes the Classic of Changes, or First Qing, not Qing as in money, Qing, the Chinese, 1150 BC. So we're going really back into time, right? So really what the Classic of Change is a system of divination. System of divination. And what does the Christian scripture say about that?
Abomination.
Abomination. We don't do that. All right?
Detestable.
Christ says, let the dead bury the dead. Paul says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Right? I don't believe heaven is a football stadium where they're watching us in our misery. Because if they did, there would be tears in heaven. There's supposed to be joy in heaven. You know? So I'm a little torn there. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's supposed to be joy. And if my Christian family, wherever they're at, the Germans or the Swedes, if they saw the way I lived before I became a Christian, I don't think they would be up there, laughing. It would be very, very sad. So no more tears, just utter joy in the presence of the Lord. Chew the fruit, spit out the seed, so to say. All right, what about key beliefs in Confucianism? Not everyone considers Confucianism an actual religion. All right? Confucius did not speak of God or gods in his writings. Despite this, he and nearly 200 disciples and sages are now worshipped in Confucian temples. So this worship came later. Same thing with Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, right? He didn't demand worship. He's sitting under the Bodhi tree doing his thing. And now, what are we doing? Well, not we, but Buddhists. They pray to him and almsgiving and, food to the Buddha, etc. So, same thing here. What about purpose of life / salvation? While he did uphold the Chinese concept of heaven as an overarching spiritual reality, very old school, sophomoric, not very good cosmology, he was really a humanist. Chinese humanist concerned with ethical behavior in government and interpersonal relations. And you're going to notice here how these religious philosophical systems are weaved into politics. Think of the Japanese flag, for example. What does it look like? Describe it to me. Rising sun. The rising sun of the goddess of the sun embedded into their flag. And of course the rays of light would be to celebrate the emperors who are still immortal and so forth. So a lot of mysticism weaved in here. Animism is weaved into some of these Far Eastern isms as well. His ideal was the harmony of the perfect individual with a well-ordered society. His teachings can be summed up as an ethical humanism. To me, those two are contradictory because you can't be a secular humanist and have an ethic. No more can you be an ethical humanist like Confucius, unless you ground that morality in God or a divine being, right, who is all virtue. Right. It reduces subjectivism and relativism. Not that I think they thought about that in the Far East in those days, So he also taught that the truly superior man is motivated by righteousness instead of profit. Again, nothing really profound, right? What does Jesus say about the same thing? What does he say? Gain the whole world, lose your soul. What?
What is a profit?
Same concept. So really nothing heavy, nothing extraordinary that sticks out like, wow, this is just profound stuff. It's very basic. And I guess if you were a thinker in those days, and most people were farmers, rice fields, and you're the guy that sits around, you actually have time to think, or came from a wealthy family, you don't like the injustice in society, well, why would you not become a writer? To try to better it, But salvation, not here. God or gods, not here, not in Confucius. He did not speak of an afterlife. He did not talk about immortality or the soul, but he did condone ancient Chinese practice of ancestor worship. We sort of had to, because if that's already embedded into the Chinese culture, right, you go against that. Why not just embrace that and add my own stuff to it? I think that's what's going on. So ancient Chinese practice of ancestors who have passed away, that was applauded. But really, you have an ethical system of respect for the dead. And like I said earlier, when you have a system, philosophical or religious, where there's an emphasis on the dead, too much respect for the dead, divination is inevitable, I believe. What are some of the other beliefs? Go ahead.
Now, with their ancestor worship, is that veneration just out of respect, or do they really deified the person as...
Within Confucius, I don't think they did so, but Taoism and Shinto, they do. Other beliefs, emphasis on cultivating what they call a filial piety, which is a love and respect for anyone's parents, there it is, just respect, and ancestors, and adhering to the laws of nature. Again, nothing really mind-blowing or spiritually awakening thus far. Distinctive practices. Rituals include offering, here we go, offerings to the spirits of ancestors as observances to mark important stages of life. What? Such as births, weddings, and funerals. Very basic. But offerings to the spirits of ancestors, we consider that demonic, don't we? Major celebrations, that was called the Teacher's Day, observed annually in Taiwan in honor of Confucius' birthday, which is August 27th. Then you have the International Confucius Cultural Festival, celebrated in Confucius' birthplace of Khufu in China from September all the way into October. So that would be their big Chinese festival, right? Oktoberfest. Major divisions or denominations. Now, listen here now. A new Confucian movement began in the 20th century, reflecting what they call a Neo-Confucian movement, AD 960 all the way up to 1279. We're now in the era of Thomas Aquinas, right? Catholic Church is exploding, you know, philosophy is exploding, theology is exploding, and you got now Neo, which is, of course, you have Confucianism. Whenever you hear Neo, like neo-paganism versus pagan, it comes later. Almost like a suffix versus a prefix, right? And of course, what this Neo-Confucian movement did is they revered not just Confucius, they went to the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, and also Laozi. Laozi was a philosopher and poet. Huh?
Was he lousy philosopher?
He was a lousy philosopher now. Setting jokes aside, good poet, good philosopher. He's best known as a reputed author of the Tao Te Ching. You've heard of that? You know, sometimes you hear about that in martial arts. You'll see some of this stuff, tying this stuff together. It's very interesting, especially when you look at some of the sports out of Japan and China. Founder of philosophical Taoism. See the T there? Right? That's not Taoism, it's the Tao. You pronounce it with the D. So we're going to get to him next. But he's also revered as a deity in religious Taoism. So now, you were saying, do they all deify the ancestors? Not necessarily, but in Taoism, yeah. But then you have like so many different sects within, say, Taoism and Shinto. You could go dizzy, you know. Yes?
Do these Eastern philosophies and religions have a concept of dogma where they'll condemn a sect, as in Christianity? You know, we have councils and say this.
Not that I've come across.
So
Not
they allow for the branching of the.
I haven't come across
Yeah, because
anything like that. I really haven't. You know, when you think of Tao, T-A-O, you know, flow or the way, just go with the flow. Why not embrace this or that? You know? Why not? And you'll see as we get deeper into Taoism and Shinto how ethics, military, politics is all sort of weaved together, you know, into a philosophical religious worldview, but it doesn't make sense because they're borrowing from too many things, and the system just gets bigger and bigger and sort of weirder and weirder and weirder. So who are you really to condemn this or that? You know, just go with the flow, yin-yang, it's all good. All right, adherence or distribution, you know, an estimated 300 million Chinese consider themselves Confucians. I have 2 exchange students from China that live at our house, and they go to modern-day high school. So I sometimes call them in, and I'm like, how do you say this? And you know, and I said, I'll sound like an idiot if I don't know how to pronounce some of these names, and not that I can remember them all, but anyway. So besides mainland China, Confucianism has also had a significant influence on cultures of Taiwan, Japan, Korea, all the way to Vietnam. And it's not exactly, again, identical in each country, right? Various sects and so forth. Origins, Taoism. Okay, so we're moving on. Not that much to really say about Confucian and Confucianism and their doctrines, but you can go to sacredwritings.com and read some of these works that I've listed for you. All right, so Taoism. Tao means the way. It is not the way. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through him. Nonetheless, the way began here in China in the 6th century BC, reaching near its final form by the 2nd century BC. And Taoism was adopted as a state religion by AD 440. AD 440. Founder Lao Tzu, the old man, also called, see if I can remember how I said it, Lao Tzu, 600 to 530 BC, was said to be a contemporary of Confucius, right? Same era. Though his true identity and historicity is in doubt by many, many scholars. Nonetheless, he's famous for the following saying: the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, is that like mind-blowing? Like, wow, now I got to become a Taoist? Well, of course. Every journey begins with the first step.
Never fry bacon while you're naked.
Say that again?
Never fry bacon while you're naked.
There you go. Yes, yes. That's profound. That's, you know, it's like meditating, one hand clapping. Other major historical figures, if I can remember, Isaac said this. Zhuangzi. 370-301 BC, which was Lao Tzu's, not lazy, noted disciple. And he's the one who popularized the Tao into what we more so see today, defining it as a spiritual, here we go, spiritual process of constant flow, of give and take. Give and take. I'm still not too impressed because you can learn this at UCLA in a sociology class. Of course there's give and take. And if you just take and take and take, well, you don't want those people. You know, there's give, but if you just take, obviously you're going to lose friends, and it's not good. Other major historical figures, well, we got, already mentioned him, really just one during that time. Major sacred writings. Tao Te Ching, ascribed to Lao Tzu, and then you have Zhuangzi, ascribed to the author of the same name. Notice here, the much larger compilation of the Taoist works is what they call the Daozang. Daozang meaning the treasury of the Tao, collected around 400 AD. So, a lot of works, a lot of writings. Key beliefs: Taoism is polytheistic, again, many gods or multi-godism, with worship of deities such as past emperors. Jade the Emperor. Lao Tzu himself came to be venerated as a deity along with many other immortals. You know, when you're dealing with veneration of the dead, and I'm not talking within Christian circles, I'm talking within these circles, where there's spiritism, divination mixed in with ancestral worship. Some are deified, some are not, depending on which ism you're dealing with. We have to remember that we don't embrace death, right? There's really 3 R's. R's, like Richard, R for Richard. There's reincarnation, and then there's resuscitation, and then there's resurrection. So Christianity, even Judaism, is really a resurrection belief system. So death is not something that we frown upon. It's really just a stepping stone into immortality. We don't embrace death, but at the same time, we don't fear death. Christ says, "Oh, death, where's your sting?" He's removed the sting of death. We ought not to fear it.
You probably will hurt them.
Depends on how you go.
We're not sadistic.
Right. All right, so many gods, etc., heavily polytheistic. Purpose of life, salvation. Taoism's doctrine vary widely. All right, depends on who you're talking to, and include numerous naturalistic or mystical Asian beliefs that are weaved in, older traditions mixed with the new. Tao refers to the way that life flows, right? Go with the flow. You know, it's always easy to go with the flow. And we have that saying that I'm sure you heard many pastors say, right? Swimming, how does that go now? Swimming along the stream is easy, but going upstream like a Christian against the wickedness of life, etc.,
Fish.
little rougher. Yeah, exactly. So flowing downstream is easy, but go against the tide here is just like go with what works, flow with it. Very pragmatic. And that goes for the spiritual planes as well as the physical or the material planes. It is the force, like, Star Wars, the force be with you. The force behind the natural order. Now, we could say the same thing. We could say that God is a spiritual force behind the natural order. But when we say force, we mean personal force, not an impersonal force. Because, it's sort of like Zechariah says, nothing is that which rocks think about. Very simple. An impersonal force cannot produce personal agents like you. You have a self-identity. Right? You know you're here. And so for an impersonal force to produce personal beings like you, that would violate all of science. Because the impersonal cannot produce the personal. The personal can produce impersonal. For example, God can make a rock and a tree. And as a personal agent, we call that agent causation, God causing the world to come into being, spoken into existence. Here you are, created in His image, imago Dei, and you can think and so on. But if you're part of the pantheos, which is just irrational, you're going to merge with the One or merge with the Tao, which is really nothing, it's the end of your self-identity. Right? Happy Hanukkah, happy resurrection. No, it's just your nothingness now as you merge with the One. If that impersonal,
Right, that is
It's your nirvana?
yeah, if that impersonal pantheos, right, brought you into being, and you have what the Greeks call ego, right? Epsilon, gamma, and omicron, or I guess it would be omega. Ego, which is I, right? An I, a self-reflective being. I exist, right? I think, therefore I am. Remember the skeptic asking Augustine, So Augustine, do I exist? Well, who wants to know? Obviously, you. There has to be a you. I mean, a you questioning the who-ness existence in the first place. But here's the point, when we think of causality, remember we say every effect has a cause. A further principle of that same physical law says the effect is never greater than its cause. Okay? So if you have an impersonal pantheos, that's impersonal, that's somehow produced, self-reflective egos, like us, we can go back and forth many millions of minds within this pantheos, now the effect would be greater than our cause. It's very rational. Make sense? Okay. Yo.
Would that impersonal force, can we apply that argument to Jehovah's Witnesses' concept of the Holy Spirit being just an impersonal force?
I think you can. I think you can. Maybe not stretch it too far. All right, so go with the flow. Spiritual material planes. It's a force behind the natural order or the principle that keeps the universe balanced and ordered. You've heard of yin-yang, right? Yin-yang is Taoism. You talk to Hindus, you talk to Buddhists and Shintos, they all don't believe the same thing. Yin-yang is Taoism. So yin, just the yin first, is passive. It's weak and disorganized, while the yang is active, strong, and integrative. So the yin and the yang can be harmonized. How? Through meditation and practices called Wu Wei, which is not doing. Now it's getting weird, right? So like meditating on the I and the not I at the same time. So the ultimate goal of the Wu Wei is alignment with the Tao, revealing the smooth, invisible power within all things, including, fjords, mountains, trees, heavily, heavily pantheistic when you think about it. Salvation is very vague within Taoism. Why? Well, who's going to save you? You can't be saved unless there isn't a Savior. And unless there's a big problem, and we're just going to focus on the common good, well, now we've reduced that down to ethics, right? So,
And where are you being saved from?
Exactly. And, you know, we can call it, well, I'm going to be saved from suffering, but I'll go through, you know, multiple cycles of reincarnation, like some of the other isms, etc. Or the afterlife is really just a continuation of this life, right? Versus reincarnation. It's a continuation of this life. But really, it's very vague as far as how to be saved. Saved from what? Some Taoists believe in reincarnation, while others believe life after death is, again, a continuation of life on earth upheld by whom? Ancestral worship. Other beliefs include an emphasis on what they call the 5 precepts, you know, and of interpersonal ethics, right? Hopefully, Steve Matthews shared those 5 pillars within Buddhism. They're very, very, very similar. Okay, distinctive practices. Here we go. Taoism and the occult. Occultic practices include spirit possession. We call that demonic possession. Spirit possession, mediumship, right, being a medium, calling upon the dead, and divination. Employing the I Ching that we talked about earlier. Astrology, or what they call Feng Shui, a form of geomancy that interprets geographical shapes, features, arrange objects to attract good energy. Crystal ball, you know, all this stuff. You see how this is now taking the form of New Age. Full-blown Hollywood New Age on Red Bull. Taoism has also influenced Chinese martial arts, such as what? Tai Chi Chuan. There it is, and traditional medicine, herbs, etc. Now, that's not to say that herbs are bad, you know. I love wheatgrass. It's good for you, as far as I know. Major celebrations, all right? King Ming Festival. What is that? Food offerings are made to deities and Lewis, spirits of the dead. Deities and spirits of the dead. And this occurs annually in the month of April. Major divisions or denominations, I'm not even going to try to pronounce those. You have the Way of Celestial Masters. You have the Way of Orthodox Oneness. You have Complete Perfection, Supreme Clarity, and the Sacred Jewel. What about adherents? Estimated at 200 million worldwide, mostly in China, although influence continues to grow steadily here in North America. You know, it's when the church doesn't do its job and we're too seeker-friendly, you know, and the worship band sounds like Motley Crue, you know, why would I want to go there, you know? So the cults pick up where the church left off. And oftentimes Westerners know what a cult is. Like, that is just weird, you know. They might know a little bit about Mormonism and polygamy. It's just, that's just bizarre, you know. Too much like Islam, you know. Think about that. By the way, when you're reading about the Far Eastern religions, have you read anything about polygamy or killing other people? No. It's only Islam and Mormonism. I mean, Mormons don't say kill people, but, you know, the polygamy, and then Islam with its polygamy. Same demon behind both religions. Or cult and religion.
Rajneesh was very prolific with his girlfriend, so.
Yeah.
Mormonism started with the debt atonement principle, where they would help you atone for the sins that the blood of Christ couldn't atone for.
Mm-hmm.
So they would. So they started with the death to the apostate.
Gosh, that is evil.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And also, remember, early Mormonism, unless you engaged in polygamy, you would not become a god. So, I mean, that was just an incentive. You have to do it if you want to become gods. Now you can become god by just being a good Mormon.
There's no longer.
You know, here's an interesting argument to remember when talking to Mormons. They believe in 3 heavens, right? And it's not the 3 heavens we believe in, right? We believe that there are 3 heavens too, which is what? Atmosphere, space, and where God dwells, right? So, the Mormon view of heaven is what? Does anyone know?
What was it? Sorry.
Celestial, terrestrial, and celestial.
Right. So, where do the pagans go? To which heaven?
The lowest.
They go to the lowest, right? The atheists and just pagans, you know. They go to the lowest heaven. The second heaven is where the religious people go. Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, anybody who believes in the religion of some deity or something. We make it to the second heaven. And if you're a good Mormon, of course, you get to the third heaven ultimately your own planet, your own universe, in which you and your wife will impregnate your own planet, and you can rule over them, right? Very, very nutty stuff. Worse than Scientology, really. And Scientology is pretty bad. But having said that, if Mormonism were true, we're all right. We're going to the second heaven, hanging out with Buddhists and Hindu. But if the Mormons are wrong, there's only two places to go, right? Hades or with the Lord. So even if Mormonism were true, I've said this to Mormons. I said, I'm good. I'm making it second heaven. In fact, if I lived my life as a full pagan, I guess I could take planet Earth for eternity as well. I mean, I would have been here for, a few decades. So, better than hell, right? How do you argue with that one? Well, all right. But if you're wrong, better rethink your stuff. Okay, so 200 million worldwide, mostly in China. Influence continues to grow in cults and other movements here in Europe and America. All right, what about Shinto? You've heard of Shinto, Japanese native religion. Japan's native religion. Origins from the Chinese Shinto, the way of the gods. Shinto is a native animist. What is animism?
Animals.
Worship of the spirit, or the spirits and
The
things.
rocks are alive, the trees are
Sister
alive.
Owl, Brother Wolf.
Brother Wolf, exactly. Yeah. Just like we see here, right? In
Native American.
Native Americans, exactly. So there's a spiritual force behind everything or in something. And, if you kill an animal, you say, I'm sorry, brother, but we have to eat you, right? So the way of the god Shinto is a animistic or animist religion dating 500 BC. Some say earlier. Some say as early as 800. Founder, there really isn't any. There is no specific founder. Instead, Shinto creation legends tell of native deities called kami. Have you read about that in your book yet? Kami. K-A-M-I.
Yeah.
And they founded the islands of Japan. Gets interesting now. So who are these kamis? We'll get to that in a minute. Major sacred writings. Numerous texts dating from the 8th century A.D. and later. The four most important texts are the Koyiki, much easier to pronounce than Chinese, and the Nihon Shoki, 720 A.D., two of Japan's national epics, the stuff that most people would read, or at least have some general knowledge. Yes?
And the emperors, they're considered, or not, kami as well, right?
Yeah.
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 Until like the World War II-ish year.
Yeah, you're right. You've done the reading.
Yeah.
Then you have the Rikokushi, right? Sounds like sushi. What is that? It's the 6 national histories, right? Nothing sacred like prophetic and no heavy eschatology like we would be used to. And the Rikokushi includes the Shoku Nihongi, which is just a historical work. And then you have the Jino Shatoki, A.D. 1338 to 1341, which is a treatise on Japanese politics and history. Welcome to Shinto. So far nothing too spiritual. All right, but now here we go. Now, this is, of course, a case against monotheism because God is regarded not as a personal creator. It's a non-theistic religion, but again, just a force behind all the kami spirits. All of nature is animated by the kami, including rocks, trees, streams, making Shinto a combination of pantheism and polytheism. They're completely two separate worldviews. You can't maintain both. Just like Mormons can't be polytheistic and also say we're monotheistic. I, the Lord, I do not change. Look how sarcastic the Lord is throughout the book of Isaiah. Find another God. Show me. Hello, I'm waiting. God is funny. There's some sarcasm there. So, when you have someone says, yeah, we believe in the Judeo-Christian scriptures, we also believe in the Pearl of Great Price, Book of Mormon, Doctrine of Covenants, and everything else, it's like, wait a second. You're mixing polytheism with monotheism, and you can't have it both ways. Same thing with Shinto. You can't really be a consistent pantheist and a polytheist at the same time and in the same way. That goes against which law of logic? The law of non-contradiction. A cannot equal non-A. There are more than a dozen, Karen, a dozen major kami,
Okay.
right? Including the Amaterasu,
She's number 1.
which is the sun goddess that we mentioned at the beginning. The sun goddess represented in the rising of Japan's national flag, right? There you have it. And from whom the emperors of Japan descend, right? So you have that in the Japanese flag. What about other beliefs? Well, Japan's current emperor, Akihito, who is the son of Hirohito, who ruled during World War II, he is still regarded as divine by some Japanese, not by all. All right, distinctive practices. What are these kamis? The kami are worshipped in Japan's many shrines, presided over by Shinto priests. So they have a Shinto priesthood. Each shrine is dedicated to a specific kami, which is very interesting. You know, this is to this kami, this is to this kami. Who is said to respond, now listen, the kamis can respond to sincere prayers of the faithful. And prayers to the kami are offered for all of life's difficulties and blessings. All right? We believe these to be what? Demons. Just like the jinns, right? All right? Shinto also recognizes many sacred places. And what are they? Well, in that neck of the woods, it would be mountains, springs, significant historical locations, and so forth. What about major celebrations within Shinto? Well, you have the numerous matsuri, which is festivals, right? Which is held in Japan throughout the year. The matsuri, it's just, you know, one great party. Here's where things apply to when we're talking about Taoism, right? You know, within Shinto, can you have a council condemning this movement and this branch? You know, you have more than 24 Shinto schools. Quite a bit, you know. So to try to split them all up or call them all one and the same, close to impossible. So what does all this mean? About 85% of Japan's population of 127 million embrace Shinto and Buddhism. Nearly all followers are Japanese. Very few non-Japanese convert. I wonder why. It is so far Eastern, you know. And to me, if I was born and raised in Japan, yeah, I can see, you know, we got history, we have this, we have that. Yeah, it's part of the culture, you know. But to try to be a Shinto and witness in the West, well, good luck, you know. So very few non-Japanese convert. Shinto has also influenced many so-called new religions or cults exported from Japan to the Americas and Western Europe, including Mahikari, which is again the festival, the Perfect Liberty Koyodon, and you have the Church of World Messianity. How's that one? And Saiko non Lei. I mean, it's just weird, you know. And none of these are like original Shinto. It just takes on a different form, so they're Shinto cults in a nutshell. I'm sorry?
Neo-Shinto.
Neo-Shinto, here you go. Oh, Steve, you're so funny. Go ahead.
With all these Eastern religions,
Yes?
are you going to talk about any significance with their concept of history, cyclical versus linear, and contrast that to
No, but you can.
the end of history?
You can.
Well,
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not. Okay, let's go to Buddhism again. Yeah, right. You guys are done with that. Let's see. We talked about world religions and views of sin, right? I saw that was uploaded on Ron Rhodes from Dallas Theological Seminary. This is his PowerPoint. I did go through that, right? With you? Or was that in a different class? Was it?
I don't know. You gave a real.
You know who Dr. Ron Rhodes is, right? Great theologian at Dallas.
Is this the one where some sins are more important than other sins? Is this
No. Like him, no. Well, let's just go through this, though. No. And maybe you'll say, yeah, we did cover this. This is good stuff, though. Most world religions have these common characteristics, that ethical principles, right, but we must adhere to. Belief in a spirit world beyond the physical world of some sort, right? This is very basic, by the way, this stuff here. So read between the lines. Belief in some form of an afterlife or reincarnation or continuation. Belief in what one must do to be saved, if there is such a thing. Humans are ignorant within Hinduism of their divine nature, right? So you need to discover that.
New Age too, yeah.
Yeah. Humans have forgotten that they are extended from Brahman, right? So ultimately you want to merge there. For this reason, they have to become subject to the law of karma. Hinduism and salvation. Salvation comes when one realizes that one's individual soul, or Atman, remember John Hick, they call him Atman, Garutman, some call it Holy Spirit. You've heard these terms before, Atman. The individual soul is identical with the universal soul of Brahman. Same with Taoism, right? We merge with the one, becoming one with Brahman, losing all self-identity. So no real bliss in the afterlife there. This is really annihilationism, if you think about it. Through numerous deaths and rebirths, reincarnation again, one finally comes to this realization, after which one is freed from the bondage of life and achieves absolute unity with Brahman. Buddhism on sin. Sin is related to desire. Well, no kidding. According to the Four Noble Truths, number 1, life is full of pain and suffering. 2, the second noble truth, everything is impermanent and suffering is caused by the desire for things that are impermanent. 3, suffering is eliminated by eradicating the desire for impermanent things. And 4, this is done by following the Eightfold Path. What is the Eightfold Path? Number 1, right worldview, a perspective that recognizes that all things are impermanent. 2, right intention, to remain on the path of liberation. 3, right speech, right? Don't cuss and speak the truth.
But
right action.
Communication come out here. It's all in scripture, and this is so scriptural.
Yeah. Right action following Buddhism's moral code. 5, right livelihood, engaging in work conducive to liberation. Right effort, persevering in a mindset free from desire. 7, right mindfulness, maintaining awareness. 8, right contemplative absorption, which is maintaining a meditative consciousness that facilitate ultimately enlightenment. All right? By following these principles, one ultimately becomes liberated from the cycle of reincarnation. The cycle of reincarnation that is an ongoing thing is what they call samsara, and is absorbed then into the absolute, the one.
Well,
And really, that's when it's game over for you. What about Islam on sin? All right, this is hamartiology. You know what that is, right? Hamartia is sin. So why are we sharing this? Why did I add this to world religions? Because it's interesting to see how world religions define sin, if there is such a thing, right? Okay, so very basic here. Islam on sin, man has lost his way. Well, no kidding. So long as man continues to follow his own mistaken ways, worshiping false gods and neglecting Allah's laws, his eternal destiny is imperiled. What about Islam and salvation? Salvation is found in complete surrender to Allah. What does Islam mean? Submission. Right. This in keeping with the meaning of Islam, which is submission, and Muslim, one who must submit. What about Zoroastrianism on sin? Sin involves the use of free will to choose evil instead of good. Huh? We could go with that definition. Right? People will be held responsible for how they use their free wills at the future judgment.
That's true.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
So they kind of borrow from everything, right? A person's ultimate fate hinges on whether he or she sides with the benevolent Ahura Mazda. Right? The car was named after that. Or the evil Angra Mainya.
I think they're getting off track on that.
A little bit there. Yeah, a little bit Daladin, right? That found value. Yeah. In deciding for the good, each person must resist the influence of the devas and focus on holiness, pure thoughts, good words, and good deeds.
What are the divas?
I don't know.
Oh.
Walking around on Sunset Boulevard. I'm not sure. If one's good deeds outweigh one's bad deeds at the future judgment, one can be saved. Not will, can. What about Jainism? Have you read about that yet? Jainism. Believe that the ajiva, or dead, which is non-living matter, clings to a person's soul and keeps it trapped in bondage. Almost think of like within Christendom, within Christianity, you know, they make distinctions, like I mentioned, when we get to demonology and exorcism in our next course. There's demonic possession, right? A demon taking control over your physical body, right? And 95% pretty much of Christians worldwide believe that Christians can be demonized and demon-possessed. Is a very small branch of Protestants that don't believe, I mean, part of Christianity don't believe in that. And of course, we would, the answer would be, well, of course Christians can be demon-possessed, and we would say the light has nothing to do with darkness. Well, it's not like the priests haven't thought about that one, right? Great is he. Oh, that's a great verse. Never thought about that one for 2,000 years. Or how could the Holy Spirit be a roommate with a demon? Right? Well, now we're entering realms where we really don't know. We can say we have two natures. How fused are they together? What does that mean when you have an immaterial soul? You know, how close is it? Think of the hypostatic union, Christ, right? The two natures fused into one. So what one priest told me in Rome, he says, you have a jacked up view of dualism, you know. You have a car, right? I said, yeah. Well, you possess your car, right? But are you in your car all the time? I'm like, no. I go, that's an awfully weak analogy. He says, yes, but you have a faulty view of what we mean by demonic possession. I go, what do you mean? Well, the Holy Spirit resides in your spirit. Demons take control of your body. So it's not like you're spiritually your soul is being demonized. It's your physical body. Depending on who you talk to. Very interesting stuff. And so, in any event, we are the minority who, you know, I mean, most of the exorcisms that are done in Rome are in Christian homes. It's not atheists coming in that want to be freed, or it's a Christian that started horsing around with, you know, horoscopes, astrology, you know, and divination and weird stuff, or, you know, drugs, getting into that whole thing, right? And one of the other things I saw at the hospital, right? Oh, not to mention that, as soon as I get out, I'm like, I'm going to take my truck in and have it serviced $55,000 later. Yeah, kid you not. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, I kid not. Well, I had a little punch list. Go through this, and then they found this and everything else. But thing rides like a Cadillac. Now it's good. All right, but in any event, so without getting off track here, I want you to pay attention here in this ajiva, or the dead, non-living matter, clings to a person's soul. It makes me think of what they call demonic attachment.
Like a familiar spirit?
Yeah, that's attached to the believer, but doesn't possess you. Okay? So this attachment, right, could be something that a person did long ago, or a generational spirit because grandma was a spiritist and so forth. I've talked to some people, you know, and I believe end of this week I'm going to a friend of mine's house. I was already there, and I guess it wasn't enough. His daughter is seeing things, placentia, and very, very ugly. So me and Father George, he's an Orthodox priest, exorcist. We're going over there, and this guy's hardcore. He's like, has he remodeled his house? Has he like pulled up carpets? Because it could be a pentagram right under her bed. You know, weird stuff like that. This stuff has happened. When we get to that in our next course, I'll share the most insane story from a very nice Christian couple from Australia. This story will you're just going to go, you got to be kidding me.
Well, they are upside down. Christians,
Satanists posing as Christians working at a church so they have access to all the students' database. What's up, Brother George? You know? Hardcore Satanists. Anyway. And her life is probably the most depressing life ever, you know. It was the lengthiest interview I've ever done.
It's like the one with the lady was just like,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'll share her story. Maybe I'll even call her, have her come in and share her story. Yeah, bring some virtual napkins. You're going to need it. All right. So, in any event, if you think of demonization, right, this doesn't make much sense to have non-living matter clinging to a person's soul. Non-living matter clinging to something that's immaterial. All right? Either I don't get it, because it just seems really, really illogical and contrary. to at least Western thought. Ajiva is viewed as material granules that weigh the soul down. Okay? The more bad karma a person has, and by the way, if that's a word that you use, karma, don't use it. Don't use it. Karma, bro. No. You reap what you sow. We don't need to incorporate, Eastern philosophical words into our own Christian vocabulary.
Christians say that all the time, and yin and yang all the time. And
Yeah.
Just go, hey, do you know what you're saying?
Yeah. Just stop it, No. Very dear friend of mine said to me, okay, one person really did me wrong a few months back, right? I mean, completely ripped me off.
Yeah.
Could I have dealt with that situation? I could have gotten biker gangs over there. I could have done anything I wanted. We can get arrested mafia. We can do whatever we want. The old Nick could have done something. And literally, I was so upset. I prayed. I go, Lord, I shouldn't wish vengeance upon him. I said, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I said, you better handle it, or I'm going to go insane. Because my neck of the woods, you will reap what you sow. I was very, very upset. And the text that I would get, big words from a little man, I was just, had to keep the cool. And I just wanted you to admit that so I could save it, in case you take me to court. Just evil. So, one member of the family comes up to me and says, hey, so-and-so? I go, yeah. Since he did that to you, his car's blown up. His military money has been cut in half. He's about to lose his condo. A guy's going crazy. La, 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 la. Wants to be a sheriff. Wants to be a sheriff. Too looped up on meds from going to war. I mean, his prescription list is worse than Dr. Feelgood in Hollywood. So it's like, shows up late for the sheriff's class, and they're just like, you want to be a sheriff? So just stick to like being a security patrolling officer at the HOA somewhere in Irvine, So I'm just like, okay, that's cool. The Lord took care of it.
Yeah.
But he's like, see, karma, bro. I'm not, it's not karma. It's what comes around goes around, right? You reap what you sow.
Really merciful to you to let you know that was happening.
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. Yeah, it was. So, not that I am rejoicing in his misery, but it's true, We do reap what we sow.
2 Thessalonians, the Lord is pleased to bring vengeance on those that persecute you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. That's a cool verse, too. It's like, excuse me, all right. Well, that's crazy. Let's just pull out those verses all the time. Pray over those, right?
Don't mess with the children of God.
Right? Don't mess with 2 Thess. That's a good one. You make a T-shirt out of that one. All right. One must be purged of all the ajiva, right, in order to escape reincarnation, this endless cycle of rebirths, in order to enter a permanent state of bliss. Okay, what's that all about? Sin, then, is anything that builds up negative karma, thereby hindering one's ability to achieve liberation or salvation. All right, Jainism and salvation. The soul becomes liberated, released from matter. Now remember, matter, God created, and whatever he created was good. Matter is not evil. Within Greek philosophy, you have matter and you have mind, right? And the mind is the nous, N-O-U-S, the nous. And if you can get this, right? Matter, I've stressed this before because we have some of this coming straight out of our pulpits. And what it is Christian Gnosticism. Yes, the flesh wars against the spirit. Do not call the flesh wicked or evil, though. It's matter. It's fallen. So, in Greek philosophy, when you read that matter is evil, it's not evil as in you exercising your free will wrongly. They call it evil because it's close to nothingness. It's just the matter, right? The materia is the lowest form of the totem pole of all living. It's way, way, way down at the bottom versus mind, nous, is up there. Hence the Corinthians, right? Engaging in all these debaucheries. Remember, Paul is like, you guys are doing stuff that the pagans won't even talk about over a cup of coffee. sleeping with in-laws and everything else. Why? And then after he's correcting the Corinthian church, and by the way, nowhere did he condemn them to hell. Nowhere. He gave them hope. And then out of nowhere, we have one of the best chapters on the resurrection in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Why would Paul transition into giving a case for the physical resurrection of Christ? Because they had a very Gnostic view of matter. So Paul sets them straight and says, listen, Christ is risen in his physical body on the third day, right? He lived. So don't be Gnostics, you know, because the Corinthians were like, hey, it's my spirit, it's my soul that'll ultimately achieve salvation. Who cares about this carcass? This physical body's just going to perish. No, you're going to be resurrected. So it's not one of those things that doesn't matter what I do to my body or with my body, right? It's my spirit that's saved, and that was the Corinthian concept.
So if you're eaten by a cannibal and the cannibal's eaten by a lion,
there you go.
And he dies and decomposes,
yes.
God still knows where to...
Still knows where you're at. Still knows where you're at. You know, in my household right now, we're talking a lot about, you know, because people are starting to die. You know, like aunt over here and this mom over here and grandpa over here. I'm at a stage in my life where it's just refreshing. I'm like watching all these old people, you know, just die. It's like, wow. You know, and then my son comes up and goes, I hope you're the last one to die, Dad.
Aww.
You know, just... It's a point in my life where you just, things that you normally wouldn't think about, you know, is just becoming more real. But so of course discussions come up on you know, should we go for cremation or should we go for being physically buried? And I'll sit there with my whole family. I'll just go. You know, if my wife's like cremation, you know, it's cheaper. I'm like, oh, there you go. Figured to say that. Well, I don't want to be cremated. It's a pagan practice. Yeah. You don't burn the image of God. Right. But if you are cremated, God will still resurrect the pieces. It's just matter anyway. Mm-hmm. But so, and here's how, if you believe that cremation is a pagan practice, because you're literally burning the imago Dei, I believe that's on your physical body and your spiritual body. Your entire being has the image of God, all right? And God saw that it was good. Who are you to burn the good? Light it on fire. It's a pagan practice. And this is not something we're going to cause division over. Norman Geisler has been trying to publish a book on Christianity and cremation, and no one's publishing it. Yeah. You know, it's like 4 people would read it, right? Go.
What about donating our bodies to science? Is that anything in it?
That's a question of ethics, I think. I think that's more like what's the intent that's involved there. I'm not saying if my wife has me cremated, I mean, unless I put up a will and plan my own funeral, right, I'll go down. But my argument is, you know what, from Moses to Jesus, I'd rather go like they did. It was good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Ethics, you know, when you think of cloning, and for example, cloning, what's the intent of cloning? It's to create a second, third you, and if I created a second or third you, well, does the second or third you have the same rights you do? If we could successfully clone you. Well, my intent is, you know what, we want to clone you, just in case your heart goes out, we're going to rip the heart out of you number 2, kidneys out of you number 3, to keep you going and going and going, because we got to keep the physical biological machine going. We don't want to die. Spare parts, right? So cloning, you can look at it like an auto part shop, right? But if we could successfully clone you, depends on what view you take of the soul. I believe that the soul is transmitted through the father and mother. I don't believe that God is sitting up there and as soon as the sperm and the egg unites, he throws in a soul, like there's some soul-making factory up there, like some of our finest Christians have believed. I believe it's transmitted directly through the parents. So if we could clone something in that sense, I believe that the clone would have a soul, and therefore the clone would have rights, not less rights than you. And if it's a breathing, walking second you, how could it? Right? Unless it has a soul. You know, he's not just going to have a walking carcass. Now, what about me giving up my kidney to save your life, right?
Yeah.
I think that's completely noble. And there's a Bible verse that says what? There's no greater love than what? You lay down your own life for somebody else, which is what Christ did. So I think that's more like the intent there is very sacrificial. It's loving. You could kill me in 5 minutes if I had to keep one of my kids going. Like that. I don't care. Listen, I've done my thing. You know what I mean? I'm tired of this place. It ain't that cool anymore. You know? I'm only here, literally, to just watch my kids grow up and be there for them. That's like and to hang out with you guys. You know?
There was a case like that not too long ago
A case like...
California.
Mm-hmm.
Their teenage daughter had leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant.
Okay, for those that are watching this, a teenage daughter had leukemia and she needed a bone marrow transplant.
Could not find a match.
Couldn't find a match.
So they had another baby.
Okay, had another baby. And they pulled it out of
For that reason.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, that's a
And
big moral
because it was
dilemma.
a minor child, the parents had rights over that.
Hmm.
You know, so they waited till the baby was, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years old.
See, that's completely wrong. So, leukemia, the child needed a new bone marrow.
Right.
So, the mother gets pregnant again.
Right.
Parental rights, they can do whatever they want, and they ripped out at 18 months, took out the baby's bone marrow and put it into an older child.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's homicide to save somebody else.
No, the baby's alive.
Without a bone marrow?
No, it's just, yeah, because they take,
They didn't kill the infant?
No.
Oh,
They
I
didn't
thought...
kill it, no.
Oh.
But I thought that was interesting that they had another baby just for parts, really. That's all.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering.
Is that baby healthy and alive?
Yeah. Like when she grows up, is she going to say thanks a lot, Mom, for...
Right.
No, I know the brother and sister.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we got to get back to class, or the people watching this, they get so frustrated. They don't hear what we're talking about in here.
How are you spelling it?
What's that?
How you spelling
Yeah. So, the soul becomes liberated, released from matter when it becomes unfettered from the effects of karma. To attain this state, one must engage in asceticism and eliminate all previous karma in the past and live in moral sobriety, there's a word for you, to prevent accumulating new karma. All right, what about Sikhism? These are the guys that look like Muslims, but they work at the 7-Eleven, right? They're not Muslims. Sikhs, very friendly, yes, very friendly, hardcore religious pluralists, you know what I mean? I love them to death. They're very nice people. In any event, need to reach out to them. So when you see one of them, only go to that 7-Eleven, you know, just deal with that guy. Human beings are intrinsically good. Oh dear. Well, what happened to a fallen nature? Every soul contains a spark of divine light. Well, it sounds awfully New Age. I can just say, you know what? Every soul has the image of God planted on them, as opposed to a divine light. However, the divine light in each human is coated with human frailties and failures. So the 5 primary vices are worldly attachment, pride, anger, lust, and greed. Well, we can get that straight out of the scriptures as well.
It's almost like the 7 deadly sins.
Exactly. Now that's a movie for you, right? Sins are removed by repeating and meditating on the Satnam, the true name. Each person must become God-focused, live selflessly, engage in charity, and live morally. Notice here, these are good things, right? But if they're works, right, that aim at salvation, it's really you doing the work, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could we put a small G on that?
Where?
God focus?
Yes. I can't change it. I can't change it. We have to blame Dr. Rhodes on this. Taoism on sin. All right, so we talked about Taoism. Personal sin and guilt is minimized in Taoism. However, chaos, disorder, disharmony can emerge if humans are out of balance with the Tao. Remember, ordered, stable universe where everything is in harmony. That's the ultimate goal. Instead of seeking to be in harmony with the natural flow, right, the way, go with the flow of the Tao, people tend to engage in intrusive actions that hinder the Tao. Striving and interfering upsets the natural equilibrium or the balanced cosmos, if you will. Philosophical Taoists believe that blending with the course of nature, becoming one with the Tao, leads to harmony, health, and peace. I can't stand that with the health. It makes me just think of fortune cookies. You know, health. Let's just throw in health. Religious Taoists focus on the quest to attain physical immortality. Physical immortality.
Wow.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it. This hinges on directing the natural forces within the body to be in unity with the Tao. Meditation, along with magic, toying with the occult, right? Physical exercising, breathing exercising, let's go yoga, folks. And sexual practices are considered the means of directing these natural forces all over the map. What about Confucianism? We talked about him earlier. Confucius viewed people as morally neutral. That's at least a safer place to be. However, he often made references to the ideal goodness that inherently resides in each person. Every person, through education, now this is false. Just look at history. Education does not make you a better person at all. Every person, through education, has within him or herself to actualize this ideal goodness, especially in relationships. Listen, we're right now at the turn of the 21st century, and it is, for its start, this early into the 21st century, it is the bloodiest beginning of any century that I can think of. And when people say, you know what, throughout, all the world religions, look at all these religious wars and, Muslims going crazy, suicide bombers, Allah Akbar on steroids, and you get the Crusaders and everything else. You know what? You could just add up all the atheistic nations and communists, add them all together. More people have been killed in the name of atheism than all religions combined, as far as religious wars go. And the Crusaders, whether you're a Catholic apologist defending, the difference between the state and the church and what really went on there, very fine apologists that have really said Protestants' view of the Crusaders are wrong. Read the Catholic defense of that time. Nonetheless, Jesus says those that live by the sword die by the sword. So I don't care, you can claim to be a Christian and just run around and behead Muslims and do what they do to us and everybody else, the radicals I'm talking about. Well, if you do the same thing they do, you're not of him, right? Vengeance is the Lord's. We can resort to peaceful protests, but we ought not to be violent. Now, I know there's a lot of fine Christians that would love to sign up and shoot over to Syria, right? And take out ISIS, I'm one of those. Maybe I should sign up. But then I probably shouldn't, right? No, leave that to the army, Leave that to the armies of the world. But, so when people are saying, in the name of Christianity, look at all the horrible things that, you guys have done, I says, okay, well, you can't trace the actions of Christians throughout history down to the sayings of Christ. People condemn all of those practices. But on the other hand, radical Islam and die by the sword, trace it right back to the Quran. So, however, he often made references to the ideal goodness, again, that resides in each person. Each person through education has it within them to actualize this ideal goodness, and that is purely false. It doesn't work that way. Confucius on salvation emphasized the rectification of all human relationships, okay? In order to regain and maintain social harmony. Again, the common good for society. This is nothing more than a sociology class mixed with some philosophy. It really is. I don't try to be disrespectful, but I'm not being wooed here. He defined 5 primary relationships and outlined the obligatory duties in these relationships: husband and wife, parent and child, elders and youth, right? Yin yang, right? Rulers and subjects, friend and friend. Very simple. Confucius' golden rule was, again, what you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. And Jesus is what you want others to do to you, do to them. So Jesus is more positive as opposed to him being more negative. Do this as opposed to do not. And I think both of them are just as solid. Really, the golden rule is just common sense. And Confucius, of course, has forgotten that he, or doesn't know that he was created in the image of God. There is no sin or moral guilt within Shinto. So moving on to Shinto, on sin, and Stan is praying again. Appreciate it. There is no sin or moral guilt because the kami, we're back to the kami, made human beings, and they're essentially good. So by pleasing the kami, almsgiving and whatnot, one can enjoy success in life. By offending the kami, one might find life difficulty. Loosely speaking, sin is that which displeases the kami. Becoming ritually pure within Shinto eliminates evil and pleases the kami. Shinto practitioners use magic, incantations, to invoke the kami to act on their behalf. That's divination. Whether to bring blessing to one's family, bring blessing to one's crop, or to ward off evil spirits. So you might have a high-ranking demon kicking out a lower one and keep them happy, right? Judaism on sin, well, this is nothing new. There's no such thing as original sin. Well, go figure. What about the garden? Well, is that myth or is it not? What about Job? Sin involves an act, not a state or inner nature. People commit sin by breaking one of God's holy commandments. Conservative and Reformed Jews interpret sin as that which damages humane society, if you will. Many Jews believe repentance and obedience to the law brings salvation. Now, there's different branches. You have Orthodox, you have Ultra-Orthodox, you have Reformed Jews, like Dr. Laura Schlesinger and so forth. This is not just mainstream, all right? This is not true of all Jews. Others believe the corporate suffering of the Jewish race atones for the sins of individual Jews. You know, when you read the Psalms, in Isaiah 53, you know, the suffering servant, in Psalm 22, right, which we consider prophetic of Yeshua or Jesus, right? Most of the rabbinical writings that I've looked at predating Christ, Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, were messianic prophecies. After, when you read Rashi out of France, no. That's talking about the nation of Israel. If you take that view, well, you really don't need a Messiah. Messiah can just be a political leader, and it's all good for them. So this corporate suffering here is, again, the Jewish nation just having been beat up and beat up and beat up to such a point that every secular Jew is really saved. Everyone is. And I think that comes from twisting the scriptures. All right. Still others believe that they're saved because they are God's chosen people. So like, I'm born American, therefore I'm saved. I must be a Christian. Right? Conservative Reformed Jews interpret salvation in terms of self-improvement and societal benefit. Are all religions essentially the same? No. Superficially, they are. Just on the surface. Some divine here, some hope of afterlife, etc. Some claim all religions are essentially the same and only superficially different. The truth is, all religions are essentially different and only superficially the same. Very important. The other religions seek to take bad men and make them better through various forms of ethics or engage in different kinds of works, right? That would be some of the isms that we looked at in the Far East. Christianity seeks to take dead men and make them alive. And that's beautiful. So you have quite a bit of a difference there. All right. I saw hands flying. Oh, you, at the beginning of Judaism.
No, you answered the question. I was going to ask Judaism.
Yeah. Very general.
You would have to exclude their primary text to have that view of no original sin, because Judaism, you have the Old Testament.
I agree. All right, what else do we have in here that we haven't covered yet? I hope the camera's still going. I don't want to have to say this again, believe me. That's a lot of talking. So far we're hanging in there, right?
Yeah.
I'm way past my bedtime, just so you know.
You are?
Yes. Okay. Boy, we got some stuff.
Staying up for it.
We're doing it. Go home and pop one and try to rest. All right, you know what we're going to do is, have you read anything of the cults? I wanted to save the last 2 weeks more. We're going to still touch on some isms, but I really want to mix in cults because you're reading Kingdom of the Cults.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's up to you. We can call it a day, or we'll hit Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, or Scientology. Pick one of the three.
Wait, say it again?
Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, or Scientology. We'll go right now. We'll go fast.
Really, really good. I don't
You've got 28 minutes on your battery.
28 minutes. All right. We'll see how many slides we have on Scientology.
Yay.
Yeah, I think we can cover 26 slides. We have to speak really fast. All right. Key verse to remember. Scientology, right? L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
When I was skating up and down Hollywood Boulevard at 16 years old,
Yeah.
they stand out there all sweaty in their suits, say, come on in, to the kids, and hook you up to this machine and all this weird stuff, and the guy sitting there is just sweaty, shaking, and just looking weird.
The E-meter.
Yes. Man, I ran out of that thing so fast. Like, you guys are crazy, literally. And I didn't know anything. A key verse to remember when studying cults and world religions is 1 John 4:1. Very, very important. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone into the world. Many false prophets. And that which is not of Christ is of what? The Antichrist. Plain and simple. If it ain't of the Lord, it's of Satan. At least according to Christ. And I think he came, with a good resume, proving who he was. Exorcisms, walking on water, giving life to the death, and ultimately raising himself from the death. Pretty strong resume. Where's the body? We don't know. Okay. Now we do know. He rose. So, this is part of what I was doing when I was teaching cults up in Peru. So, let's get into it. As Christians, we defend free speech, as do the cults. Yet, we are also to refute false doctrine. Jesus made various woes to the Pharisees, right? Moreover, the Scriptures also declare that those who do not believe in the atonement of Jesus Christ and those who deny the literal and physical resurrection of Jesus and more are condemned straight to hell, period. It's a real place. We cannot fear speaking up for the truth. In all, the truth will set you free, period. And unless we teach and correct people snatched up by cultic ideology, they're hell-bound. Okay? We need to speak up. All right, so, country of origin, of course, America, right? Founder, L. Ron Hubbard, Lafayette Ronald of Nebraska, 1911, died in 1986. Various members referred to him as LRH. He grew up on a ranch in Montana, only some 4 churches in the community. Headquarters, Gold Base, a heavily guarded compound in Riverside County, California. Maybe we should go out there and visit them. You better buy a tank, on Craigslist for $85,000 because you're not going to get near that. All right, main works. I actually went online to see. It'd be cool to have a tank in the garage. Found one for $45 grand. Can you imagine? That's an RV garage and just park it in there. It'd just been awesome. I was sitting there. It was Nick. He's in the tank, right? Playing video games with my son. All right, setting that aside, let's get serious. Main work, Dianetics. We've heard of that, right? Dianetics. Hubbard's teachings are also referred to as the source. The word Dianetics means through the soul or through thought. He's trying to be really, really spiritual here. Really what he is a comic writer. Yeah. It sold some 55,000 copies in the first 60 days. I wish one of my books would sell that many. All right, magazine Advance, which is where Hubbard is referred to as the second Buddha. Wow. Former Scientologist, or famous Scientologists, let's back up here. Movement began in 1952. Famous Scientologists include Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Elizabeth Moth, Jason Lee Diana, Elfman, Giovanni Lisa Marie Presley, go figure, etc., and of course Kirstie Alley as well. Source LA Times. You can Google famous Scientologists. Okay, moving on. Background. Lawsuits. The Church of Scientology does not play, and they've been involved with numerous lawsuits. You throw Tom Cruise under the bus, he's coming right after you. There's one thing I actually do appreciate with him. He will not take any negative press. He'll go right after you just to shut you up. That's one thing I do like about Tom. Just in case he watches this and goes after me, I have to say that. Now, these, of course, include Tom Cruise, who's frequently in the headlines, or back in the day he was. One thing you have to appreciate about Tom Cruise, if he was a Christian, he would be a Christian apologist, and he'd be a very good one. He'd be another Walter Martin, I tell you that. Because he takes the thing to Chinatown.
He started out that way. He started out in seminary as a teenager, like a Catholic, he knew all that.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to different schools together. Just joking. Dianetics, all right. The Bridge to Total Freedom. Sounds good. IAS, the International Association of Scientologists. The Way to Happiness Foundation, International. Narconon Drug Rehabilitation Centers. Cremation, United for Human Rights. Youth for Human Rights International. Applied Scholastics International. Volunteer Ministers Program. CCHR, Citizens Commission of Human Rights. Sterling Management. They're quite involved, right? Lots of related organizations. Huge. Lots of money. Current leadership is David Miscavige, chairman of the board, Religious Technology Center. Sacred scriptures are, again, the works of L. Ron Hubbard, seen as the source. Other sources of authority. Aside from the writings and talks of L. Ron Hubbard, there are numerous courses designed by Hubbard, which needs to be taken for one to become a clear. You want to become a clear? Well, take the courses and then eventually an operating thetan. Thetan. Not Satan, a thetan, right?
Small price
But
of
Jesus was
$1
not
billion.
clear.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Shade below,
That's
right?
right. Well, it came from another planet, remember? So, periodicals, publications, magazines such as Impact, Reality, Celebrity, and Freedom. Publishing houses, Bridge Publication in North America, New Era Publication International outside of North America, radio and television programs, New Era Productions, schools and other institutions, Sea Org. Sea like ocean,
Is that
Sea
the
Org.
Florida one?
Think so. Meeting places, Churches of Scientology, Church of Scientology Community Centers, Church of Scientology Missions, Celebrity Centers cater to members who are celebrities. The Free Winds Ocean Vessel is home and floating teaching center to the more advanced Scientology courses. Means of attracting new members. How do you witness if you are a Scientologist? Scores of Scientologists volunteer many, many hours of their time in working for the, quote, org, spreading the message of L. Ron Hubbard in order to get discounts for themselves on Scientology courses that they would be otherwise unable to afford. Yes?
Well, they've been sending out now emails, take our free personality test.
Uh-huh.
That's how they get you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
Stay away from the personality tests online, right?
And they post breakdowns for actors to lure you in.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're a savvy bunch, that's for sure. New recruits are often approached to first study Dianetics before they are introduced to Scientology. Scientologists can often be seen soliciting passers-by, you know, to take the free personality test in order to pique their interest into studying Dianetics. In other times, the pre-clear is offered to be shown a free recruitment movie in order to build more interest. So they're very, very slow. Mindset towards Christianity. Hello. If some of the literature and during recruitment, Scientology will often say that it is incompatible with and tolerant of other religions. It'll claim that, right? Yet in reality, it promotes itself as the only means to total freedom. You don't need Christ. L. Ron Hubbard's writings are seen as the only means of emotional healing and spiritual growth. Joseph Smith should have just stuck to the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, and all that stuff. You should not mix the scriptures. Just run with your own thing. At least this guy did. Don't try to mix them. So at least they're straight there. This is the way. Total freedom, only here. You're not going to be liberated by anything else unless you follow Hubbard. Eastern philosophical influences, or auditing. What is that? According to CRI, remember, Christian Research Journal, quote, the basic tenets of Scientology result from an eclectic mixture of Eastern philosophy and the personal research of Hubbard into a variety of disciplines, as well as data uncovered from auditing. Auditing is Scientology's counseling or extensive examination of the present life and past lives of the pre-clear, your past, or initiate. In one of its many definitions, Hubbard has described Scientology as, quote, the Western anglicized continuance of many earlier forms of wisdom, unquote. These include the Vedas, Taoism, Buddhism, Judaism, Gnosticism, early Greek civilization, and the teachings of Jesus, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Freud. Wow, that's bold.
Wow.
Very bold. According to Hubbard, quote, Scientology has accomplished the goal of religion expressed in all man's written history, the freeing of the soul by wisdom. You can find this at www.equip.org. Articles on Scientology. Founder Hubbard was a popular science fiction writer in the 1930s. This is so embarrassing for me. It's almost incriminating, self-incriminating. There's no wonder that his self-made theology is highly tainted with sci-fi and Eastern philosophy. Prior to his book Dianetics, right, a New Jersey science fiction convention in 1949, Hubbard said this, quote, as he's up there talking to his colleagues, he says, you know, writing for a penny a word is ridiculous. If a man really wanted to make $1 million, the best way would be to start his own religion, unquote. You can see this in Time, April 5th, 1976. Of course,
Many similar things, not just that one time, but
yeah.
many times. He's quoted lots of witnesses here. You can see that sort of thing.
1 year later, he comes out with his book, Dianetics, right? Popular self-help psychology book, coupled with religious, sci-fi, and Eastern philosophical genre. That's really it. He ran with it. He really did. It's just too bad that they had this on recordings. Oh my gosh! He should have just been a Hollywood producer. Would have been way better. Lies and unverified claims. Various followers having left this cult have sought to refute Hubbard's incredible claims. Some include 1, having traveled extensively to Asia, studied at Georgetown University, Princeton, and Sequoia University, and 3, graduating from Columbian College. When Hubbard claimed to have been abroad in Asia, he actually attended high school in America while he claimed to be in Asia. He did attend Georgetown for 2 years, but was placed on academic probation due to poor grades. Sequoia University, where's that at? It's a school located in a 2-story home in Los Angeles. Got to be kidding. Hardly a recognized school. In fact, the California legislature closed it down in 1952. So like, let's go to Nick's seminary. We meet at my garage. I'll start giving out honorary doctorates and everything else. Yeah, there we go. Nothing can confirm his graduation from Columbian College. Nothing, at least not that I've seen. Hubbard claims to have been crippled, pronounced dead twice. So he's got something Christ doesn't. Jesus only died once, right? This guy died twice. He's been blind and worse, right? He also claims to be a nuclear physicist. It's almost like Swedenborg of Sweden on steroids. Read that in your chapter, Swedenborganism. Okay. You know, see, one of the nuttiest cults ever to come out of Sweden. But he was smart. He was too smart for his own good. You know, when you go to LA Harbor, or just harbors of the world, the docks are made of concrete, right? How can you build concrete that doesn't dissolve in salt water? Thanks to Swedenborg. He also invented dynamite. But he also started his own religion. All right, his medical records, talking about L. Ron Hubbard now, records the medical records mention none of the sort. 2, concerning his self-proclaimed title of a nuclear physicist, Hubbard only took 1 course on molecular and atomic physics and failed the class. So not really a, nuclear physicist by any imagination. All right, some sources documenting these errors are Russell Miller's Barefaced Messiah, The True Story of L. Ron Hubbard, and Ben Corridon's former Scientologist and former head of Riverside Scientology Mission. Some pretty good sources. So they come out saying this thing is a joke. Science of a Messiah. Hubbard was divorced twice. Okay. Hard to be a Messiah if you can't even keep your own house in order. Maybe 1 time, but 2. In fact, he married his second wife before his first marriage was annulled. His second wife's divorce allegations included sleep deprivation, beatings, strangulations, kidnapping of their child, and fleeing to Cuba. Hubbard also counseled his wife, Sarah Northrup, to commit suicide if she really loved him. End your life. Come on, honey, right? Yet, his 3rd marriage to Mary Sue Whipp lasted until his death in Creston, California. Mary Sue was accused of much illegal activity within the organization of Scientology, a mastermind making a good spy. Look, a good, I'm getting tired. She was like a master spy making a good action movie look like child's play. Really, really manipulative. Knew how to make money and fleece the flock. Hubbard's own niece. Hubbard's.
Fantastic book.
You gave me that book, or let me borrow it.
Yeah.
Jenna, Miscavige Hill writes in her must-read book, quote, It remains a mystery to me how, in our current society, this Scientology can go on unchecked. It is particularly insidious because of its celebrity advocates and affiliated groups such as Narconon that we mentioned earlier, Applied Scholastics, and the Citizens Commission of Human Rights. I feel that people should be warned about what the church truly is, who its founder really was, what really goes on there, the length it is willing to go to, and what they are willing to sacrifice in the name of achieving their own ends, or their ends. The ends themselves are shrouded in secrecy and conflicting information. Scientology always has been a game of power and control. L. Ron Hubbard was the ultimate con man. Wow. That's heavy. From his own niece. Talk about coming out.
Well, Jenna Miskovich is the leader's niece.
And it's hard to figure out how much of Scientology was an experiment in brainwashing and controlling people, and how much of it was truly intended to help people. Moving on. Teachings of God, Jesus, man, creation, salvation, and death. We have about 15 minutes left before this thing dies. All right. And, of course, the occult. All right, God. It refers to God as a supreme being, God and gods. All Scientologists are free to use the term they deem fit. All right, you have here, quote, there are gods above other gods and gods beyond gods of the universes. Look in Scientology, and you'll find that. Jesus, Hubbard did not view Jesus as Messiah. Hubbard defines Messiah as messenger. We got that backwards because messenger is angelos, angel, right? So, yet Messiah means anointed. So, Hubbard cites sources mentioning that Jesus belonged to the cult of the Essene community. No, he didn't. If anybody was in Essene, it was John the Baptist, and I even think that's a stretch, okay? So, apparently, Jesus was part of the Essene community. Maybe he floated around Qumran. Remember, Josephus says there was some 4,000 Essenes living throughout Israel at the time. So he believed in reincarnation. Well, if so, then Jesus did not teach a theology of resurrection, but a reincarnation theology. We don't have a shred of evidence of that in the first century at all, right? Hubbard also maintained that Jesus engaged in Hindu teachings. What else? Quote, neither Lord Buddha nor Jesus Christ were operating thetans according to the evidence. They were just a shade above clear. That's in a Certainty magazine. Jesus was a mere implant from millions of years ago, coming from another planet, right? What is man? Man is more than we think. Well, no doubt. I could say that to an atheist. You have a soul. No, I don't. Yeah, you do. We are not our bodies. Well, I could say the same thing. I'm not just my own physical body. But yet, this is a Far Eastern philosophical idea that you see in the isms that we've covered so far. Man is essentially good. Man is a thetan, a spirit, and this spirit is more than 80 trillion years old. How do you dream that up? Divine revelation? 80 trillion years old, residing somewhere in your skull. In your skull. It's residing there somewhere. When our bodies die, the thetan spirit reports to an implant station, such as the one that's on Mars. Such a state of in-between lives, the thetan is provided, quote, a forgetter implant, and is then sent into another body. Often thetans will fight over which body to join next. The thetans travel very fast and communicate by, what? Telepathy. There we go. Thetans can be packed in ice and frozen or dropped from a UFO into the ocean. No problem there whatsoever. The main problems we see in society stems from man's past lives, which are engrams, right, collected from the past. What about his view on evolution? According to Dr. Walter Martin, quote, the first stage of life is the photon converter, which converted light into energy as its main function. The photon converter then had nothing to do at night, therefore our need for sleep. Following later came the jellyfish, but the jellyfish got tired of being pressed against stone. So it compensated. This must be his nuclear physics class that he failed or confused with biology. So the jellyfish got tired of being pressed against stones. I mean, this is just poor Darwin. You know, Darwin wouldn't even write this when he was 5 years old. The clam had two hinges that would fight over which one would be opened or closed. This caused the engrams. Later in man's evolution, these hinges became man's jaws, small barnacle-like spores. attached to the outer edge of the clam shell later became the pattern of man's teeth. All right.
Your teeth used to
He
be
doesn't
ornamented.
pull any punches at all. He's just running with this stuff. But it is an interesting story, right?
Yeah.
Is it interesting? I mean, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, you better have some explanation that this is his. He continues on origins, Hubbard again. Another shellfish was the weeper, sometimes called the grim weeper, or boo-hoo. His job was to adapt to the seashore. It pumped salt water in and out of its shell via 2 tubes. How do you know? You were there? These tubular holes later turned into man's eyes.
It
So.
makes sense, though.
It doesn't make sense, though. So funny. Moreover, concerning engrams, our past bad experiences, right? When people smoke cigarettes, it's because our past memories of experiencing volcanoes. So you got to stop smoking. Way too many volcanic nightmares stemmed in you. Yes, somewhere in your skull. 80 trillion years ago, you've been a smoker. All right, creation. According to CRI, the universe was not created by a single supreme being, ex nihilo, out of nothing like we believe, thus having a separate existence of its own. Instead, the Scientology universe constitutes a subjective mental emanation or projection of the Thetans, having merely an agreed upon and not actual reality. Thus, the entire physical universe is a game, a product of Thetan ingenuity designed for escaping boredom, which apparently emanates from an original Thetan consensus to create in prehistory. As a product of Thetan minds, the universe is capable of endless manipulations by an aware or spiritually enlightened Thetan. Thus, Scientologists may view psychic powers developed through their church practices as a confirmation of this teaching. But for a densely ignorant Thetan, principally all non-Scientologists, which were you and I, the universe is a deceptive and deadly spiritual trap. Ignorant Thetans, non-Scientologists, are bound by engrams and think that they are only physical bodies. No, I don't. I believe that I have a spiritual entity within me, right? As a result, they are weak, impotent creatures enslaved to a material universe that inhibits self-realization of their nature as an important spirit. In essence, the material creation as we know it is not only an illusion, but also a positive evil. That is, a powerfully destructive barrier one must overcome in order to advance spirituality. Moving on, what about salvation? The pitiful Thetan slavery to Mest and his own conditioned ignorance continues for millennia, right? 80 trillion years ago, some are stored in your head, until Hubbard discovered the secret nature. Whenever you hear that, one person discovering the secret nature, you know, it's a red flag of falsity. Who are you? How do you know? Right? Who, where, what, when, why? So he here discovers the secret nature of humankind and pioneered a solution to the Thetans' misery by developing a universal plan of salvation through Scientology. Auditing engrams may be neutralized, and the Thetan made increasingly self-aware or enlightened. Right? By various techniques, a practical methodology was developed to enable or to initiate, to recognize his or her own spiritual existence, to separate oneself from the Mest body, and to begin to exert mental control over the Mest, which is the universe, right? In other words, the initiate may eventually achieve a state of clear, and then by progressing through numerous levels of operating Thetans, the OT, not Old Testament, operating Thetan, increasingly achieve self-realization. An operating Thetan is one who is more and more aware of and operating according to his true Thetan abilities. And for the sake of this thing going to sleep, we'll pick up on slide 23 next week.
Matter, energy, space, and time is Mest, right?
I'm sorry?
Physical Mest. Matter, energy, space, and time.
Yes.
I think that's what that is. That's what it is.
So, anyway, he doesn't pull any punches. Scientology is very, very interesting. If you haven't read that yet, read through it for next week. Oh, gosh, we don't have class next week, so We'll have the uploaded lecture. I'll probably finish Scientology, maybe even Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, all in one shebang. I don't know. But the 22nd. All right, we'll see you next week.